to This Week I'm Learning, the podcast where the topics are lightly researched and the hosts are slightly touched in the head. This is episode 18, also known as the Spooktober Special number 2, recorded on October 8th, 2020. Or, if you're Asguardian also, today is I can never fucking say that. Let me try that again. Ophiuchus second in the 4th year, and I'm your host Brandon Vader, also known as Dracanis in the forums and games. I am joined as always by Cody Stratman to that direction.
God damn it!
Dang it! Okay, to that direction.
Nobody's there.
Just down, man. Just down.
Hi.
Hi, I found you. Cody Stratman, also known as Psychonitrous, which would mean to his direction over that direction would be Colton Roper, also known as Seeker4761. And
Hello.
to that direction is Charlie Stifler, also known as Mjolnir.
2 out of 3. 2 out of 3, not bad.
Yeah. Well, once I get the one,
It's just like
I'll remember one of these days, I
Which
swear.
way? That
You
way?
haven't
That
made the mistake of pointing up yet.
Yeah.
Right.
Because I'm on top.
Whatever.
Or is he
know it.
behind me?
That's
So that's why you...
No.
There's a terrible
No.
joke in there. So that's something about giving a clap. Anyways.
If you watch later, you might find out.
We're children.
So much. And yet my child listens to us.
Represent.
Okay. So, today, Cody is going to teach us about unlocking new locations through testing.
And Colton is going to tell us that sometimes nightmares become reality.
Ooh.
And Charlie is going to tell us about, he's going to continue his stories of paranormal investigation, specifically tech and, just stories in general.
Yep.
So, it makes sense. Part 2!
Yep. And Brandon will be telling us about beta waves. Say it in vibrato. From space.
From space!
I love our notes.
Yeah,
anyway.
I do too.
So-
I love the
so
face that
terrible.
Cody makes when I do stupid shit with our notes.
Fantasticness all
Fucking
around.
Professionals.
We're great.
Well, Cody, take us away. Unlocking new locations through testing. Is this gaming?
Only because I play games will I wait for my flights. So
Okay.
yes.
Okay, all right.
What I am talking about is the new fun thing that airlines are talking about that we should have done, like 6, 8, 10 months ago. If we could have rolled out more testing capacity, which, every doctor has been clamoring for, is testing, more testing, please, for the love of God. But I guess, 10 months later, well, I guess not 10 months, 8 months later, it's good enough. So in October, a number of airlines are starting to do testing because they found out that people don't want to go on vacation if they have to go somewhere and then stay in their hotel for 2 weeks in their room. That doesn't make for a fun vacation. Unless you just really like the hotel room. I mean, there was
That sounds radical.
There was a couple trapped in Singapore in a hotel there, and they did enjoy that. So, I mean, there's that.
Emphasis on the word couple.
Yeah, exactly. And Singapore, too. They were trapped. They were, stuck in a $500 a night hotel, and they paid not $500 a night for that. And they were like, oh, this was great. It's like, well, yeah.
Nice.
So the way that they're doing this is by there's actually two different types of tests. Technically, there's 3 different types of tests, but we're only really going to talk about 2. So there's molecular tests, which are you might have also heard them as PCR tests, and that actually swabs for the virus's genetic material, or RNA. That one takes longer. You typically have to send it to a lab, although they're getting better. You can now have as little as several hours for a turnaround time on those. So, like, there's some that are doing 2-hour turnaround time now. Before, it was unheard of, and for a while, the turnaround time was like a week. At the worst case, it was like 2 weeks for turnaround time, which basically means it's completely and utterly pointless if you have to wait more than like several days for it, because most people aren't going to care or while they're waiting on it. Matter of fact, we had an instance at work where there was a person that thought they might have it, got tested, went to work anyway, then found out they tested positive. So...
Excuse me a moment.
There you go. Luckily, they worked on a different floor. And then the people are like, why does IT? Why are they crazy and wearing masks down there? And the rest of us aren't. And it's like, okay, well, whatever. Yeah. This virus is strange because, like, there's one person who is, let's just say, has a ton of comorbidities that had, like, super mild symptoms. Then there's one woman that could kick all of our asses if we fought her combined. And
that's our next special.
Yeah, exactly. There we go. Please
we
sponsor.
Just have to get up to Alaska and
just
find
attack a
clean
random
wrestling
woman
mats.
and get her ass kicked. Got it.
The problem
that took a
is
turn.
so now she's actually has like months and months long effects from it. So yeah, it's again, amount of virus seems to matter. I think I've touched on this before, so I'm not going to reiterate it too much. Anyway, back to the different types of tests. The molecular tests are pretty accurate. Again, Charlie can probably tell me when I have any of my information incorrect. Please fill me in if I do get anything inaccurate. Like I said, hours to days, depending on the test. What's interesting is, so I guess before I talk about this, I should talk about the other type of test, which is the antigen test. That tests for viral proteins. And that test is like, within minutes. 15 minutes is usually the time that you can take it and get back. And it's accurate on the positive side, which means if you test positive for the virus, you know that that's a pretty good and accurate test. Unfortunately, it is somewhat inaccurate on the negative. So if you test negative for the virus on this test, that doesn't necessarily mean that you're negative for COVID. So you have to take more tests or just get a molecular test or PCR test.
So to give you a little insight, my agency is buying one of those machines right now. It's on the way already. I've already learned how to use it. I'm trying to figure out what kind of sterile field I'm going to create at our operations headquarters. But those are the machines that CU and DU are using to test their athletes in order to be able to have some semblance of a season this year.
Mm-hmm.
So, yes, very familiar.
Okay, that's interesting. Yeah, that's got to be intriguing how... So you just pump out the amount of tests that you give those people? Like, okay, hourly testing? Or maybe not hourly, but...
Not hourly. So NCAA has... And they've got the fortunate thing about the colleges that are choosing to do this, they also have like pre-med and med docs being students. So they've got free lab assistants.
Ah, okay.
So what we would be doing would be providing, supplemental to that, or being able to test our employees, or being able to set up a testing site ourselves and help the Colorado Department of Public Health and Human Services.
So does that one now? One thing I didn't find out, does that have to use? I know there's a big issue about the molecular test, is it has to have these, chemical reagents.
Yeah.
Does the other type of test require that, or is it just less of an amount of material that it requires?
It's less of an amount. The machine is much more like the machines for the lab tests, the hours to days test.
Mm-hmm.
Those are specialized machines, and there's like 300 of them in the entire country. The molecular test, the
the antigen
test. Yeah, the antigen test. They run on a machine that is very similar to the machine that every single doctor's office has in the United States to test for flu. And so by having that test happen in those kinds of machines, you just made the number of machines that could test it in the tens of thousands instead of the hundreds. So
okay, so I mean,
it's a much more accessible format.
But either way, that's still better than no testing at all.
Right.
So
Absolutely.
honestly, if you can get those cheap enough and in massive amounts, even if there's, they have some inaccuracy to them on the negative side, it still would be worth it to have them. Maybe not to 100% rely on them, but just as an informational guideline. Now, here's the thing that the airlines have been doing is they've been, depending on the airline, depending on the destination, in order to fly to some areas, you can skip your quarantine if you provide a negative test. Now, here's where things get kind of weird and fuzzy. So depending on where you're going and depending on the airline and depending on where you are, the tests are different as far as the expense. So, for instance, the molecular test ranges anywhere from $150 to $250. So, not super cheap when you have a family of 4 and you're flying between different, 2 different areas that would require the test. So that adds like an extra $2,000 to your trip, which would be extremely problematic.
Yeah.
The other test is more like $50 to $60 for the antigen test. And then the rules get kind of weird. So it's 72 hours. So most people know it's 72 hours before flying, but it's a little bit more specific than that. So, for instance, if you're going to Hawaii, it says travelers from, and this is from the, actually, Alaska Airlines on their travel advisories. It says, travelers who have proof of valid negative COVID-19 test result taken within 72 hours of the final leg of departure to Hawaii will not be subject to the 14-day quarantine. So that means, if you are flying from, let's say you fly from Florida, you're near a main airport in Florida, you fly from Florida to Seattle to Hawaii. So you just have to get to Seattle before that 72 hours goes away and you turn into a pumpkin. And as long as you get board that flight, by the wording of this...
I see what you did there. It's October. You said they turn into pumpkins. Good job. Golf clap. Good job.
Now, however, Massachusetts has different wording. So for Massachusetts, it's quarantine for 14 days or produce negative COVID-19 test result. Both of these require the PCR test or the molecular test, by the way. That has been administered up to 72 hours prior to your arrival in Massachusetts. And I think the difference between this is if your flight gets diverted. You could argue that your last leg is still the same flight number, even if it gets diverted to somewhere else, or if it gets, you sit on the runway for 4 hours because of irregular ops or something, or a mechanical or whatever, versus Massachusetts, where you could easily get screwed over. And where this has actually been a real factor has been, not necessarily with tests, but earlier this year, when the UK closed down and started requiring people to quarantine for 2 weeks. And they did it at midnight. And what happened is there were flights that were coming in that one arrived earlier than expected. So it was supposed to arrive at like 12:05 and instead arrived at 11:57 or something like that. And then there was a flight that was supposed to arrive at 11:50 that arrived at like 12:10. So the difference is the people that arrived early did not have to quarantine, where the people that arrived late did. Even though when they booked their ticket, and the tickets, when that happened, the price, because there were a ton of people vacationing in Spain, the prices on tickets shot way up. So a bunch of people were trying to get home in time. So there's a bunch of people that like madly booked to get home and missed that cutoff and basically quarantined for 2 weeks. So it's interesting how that works. When they redid it at a better time, like 3 or 4 in the morning, when there was a large gap between flights. But this is still, like, that wording makes a huge difference.
And really, you shouldn't be testing before departure, because if people are actually doing what they're supposed to be doing, they're going to work, they're going to the grocery store, they're going home. Like, really, that's what life is right now. And you go through the airport, and you could catch it. And you should have to land, spend a night in a designated hotel, and do a PCR test the next morning.
Well, have they determined how quickly you start to see symptoms? You get a positive test from...
You can have a positive test before you have symptoms.
Yeah, and because you may not even see symptoms. You might just be symptoms.
And I guess the better way to put it, at what point from when you are exposed to it, like how soon after that can you theoretically test positive? Or have they? I mean, I'm sure that's still up in the air. Yeah. It's probably. I'm guessing it's 24 hours ish, maybe.
Which could be up to 72 hours.
So there's definitely this huge gray area where you could catch it in transit. You could catch it. So Alaska Airlines for flights to Hawaii are offering tests in Seattle. Not in the airport, but you actually have to exit the airport, go into Seattle, get the test. So, I mean, that kind of makes sense because that's where a lot of their flights to Hawaii depart from. Alaska is actually one of the most expensive testing areas. If you are not an Alaskan resident and you show up in Alaska without a test having been done, you are required to quarantine or take a $250 test. As an Alaskan resident, I can just take the test for free. So, but I would probably... so I might have to go to Colorado this year, and if I do, I am going to probably take one in Colorado, depending on what the facilities are like and the test turnarounds are. In Alaska, you can check, and they actually have a really cool website where you can see what the test turnaround time is for the hospital, for the private sector labs, and there's one other type of lab, too, that they have, that you... Right now, the test turnaround times are like 1.5 days for one, 2.1 days, and 2.3 days for the other one. So we're doing all right, but there was a point where we were like 5 days out, which again doesn't really help anyone. So yeah, it's this really variable situation. And I think a lot of the airlines are really just scrambling to get something in place because they're desperate. It's interesting times.
It'd be nice if they just set like national standards and it was just the same in every damn state, so that there's just, regardless of the idea of different areas have different, obviously, rates of infection, but that's how it spreads. If you set a standard for every single state to follow, that every single airline has to follow, everyone knows the procedure, it's more efficient. I don't know.
But that would require national leadership.
So
And that's as far down that rabbit hole I'll go. Sorry.
I agree with you in one essence, and I disagree with you in another. So, for instance, like Hawaii and Alaska have different logistics when it comes to medical care and dealing with the virus. So,
but
like,
again, so you base that standard on the hardest to, I don't know, whatever state would have the lowest or hardest to actually get the test. That's the standard they'd base it on.
Oh, so like No Child Left Behind.
Yeah, I mean,
again, this isn't the,
excuse me a moment. Excuse me.
To be fair, but this isn't the same thing.
I know it's not the same. It's a complicated issue.
And then if you have these states like Hawaii or whatever have different logistics, then you set up the logistics for it. That if it's the standard, then you put the money to do it. That's just what you have to do. Sorry.
Yeah,
that's my opinion. It's inefficient to do it the way they're doing. The fact that freaking Hawaii and Massachusetts have completely opposite standards, and then you have a medical opinion like Charlie's saying that this might make more sense. Why aren't they basing on a potential medical opinion? Why the hell it's all unnecessarily confusing.
So
what's the standard? Boom.
The advantages to testing before departure would be you have cleaner transit areas. So if everybody's tested before departure and has the results to those tests before they leave, then when you're in the airport, you should be with like-tested people.
But the problem is, you're still allowing people who have not tested to go places and travel, and then be subjected to a 2-week quarantine. So your concept of a clean airport is jacked.
Yeah.
I think
so.
I mean,
either you need full testing,
right,
or you need testing on arrival with that 1-day break. Like what you're saying,
again,
as long as your turnaround time is actually 1 day. It has to be the quarantine for whatever that turnaround time is, which is why we need quicker turnaround times. So either maybe you take 10 of the, antigen tests, or however many, I don't know.
Just to make sure
that
you
stick all the
false
Q-tips up
negatives.
the nose, just constantly.
Yeah.
It's just like everything else. You either do it right or you get half-assed results and ineffective. That's just been the issue of this whole thing, at least in my opinion.
Well, yes, but
naysayer, none.
So in that statement again, that would actually completely discount the antigen tests, which are still, even though they're not, as reliable, they're still an interesting metric and a good metric to have. It's better to have that than to have nothing.
Right, but if the idea is to protect the public health, again, half-assed measures result in deaths, and all because somebody had to travel to Hawaii because they do it every year. I mean, I don't know. You know my opinion on it. We've talked in private. It's all a thing of... Yeah, and that's the way it should be done. At this point, we've been screwing around for so long. Fucking set up a standard. If it has to be before, it's the same for everybody. That way, if you're going to Alaska, if you're going to fucking Hawaii, going to Colorado, you know the procedure. So you're not flailing in the wind.
Don't come here.
We're full.
I might be coming to Colorado, so maybe we'll
until
do
the ski area opens up.
So,
we're full.
That's
you two, figure out when you're coming, and you're coming at the same time, and we're doing a live recording of the podcast.
Yeah, we'll make it happen.
Ooh.
That'd be fun. Even if
Nice.
it's for like a weekend. Oh hell yeah, we're doing it.
Yep.
Yeah.
2023, guys. I'm just kidding.
Oh,
made
that's
myself
sad. It's so
Ah.
sad.
No, we're
Oh.
doing it from Bangkok if we're waiting until 2023.
Fair enough. Somewhere.
Expensive.
To continue on this just depressing pathway, Colton, tell us all about how sometimes how nightmare can become reality, like it is now.
Ooh, every day in 2020 is hell.
Turns
So,
out 2020 was a dream. Somebody had it.
wouldn't that be nice?
I had a dream.
While they were singing,
We-
except for a
Baby
bad
Shark.
dream.
Oh, well, the murder hornet should have been a clue. Anyways, have you guys ever heard of about a phenomenon known as sleep paralysis?
Yes.
No.
I know you have,
Mhm.
Charlie. That question wasn't for you.
And I've experienced it.
Okay, the only
Well-
other non-medic in the room says, I have never heard of it.
I'm sure you have. I'll get into it. So, to go with our Spooktober month, even though I said it wrong, I decided to learn a little more about it. Didn't know a whole lot about it, except that is a creepy, strange thing that can happen to a human being when they sleep. So, a little history. The earliest known recorded instance in history of sleep paralysis is around the 7th century, with the first official scientific study being done in 1876. Even though it's been 140 something years, the science on what causes it is still kind of up in the air. So what is it specifically? Well, you kind of need to understand sleep a little better first to really kind of understand what it is. Which again is kind of an issue because as far as scientists and doctors know, the only reason that humans sleep is really because we get sleepy. There's a quote somewhere by like a famous Stanford sleep study guy who said that exact quote. We don't know why people sleep; they just get sleepy. That's the only reason we sleep. So kind of interesting.
Isn't
Again,
there a quote
it's all-
by River Tam or something about that too?
Probably. I'm sure it's based on it. So REM, or rapid eye movement sleep, is a period of sleep where you are most likely to experience a dream, according to the known science. During this time, your body tends to freeze up in a state of partial or total paralysis. This is presumably to prevent you from translating the movements that you experience in your dream to real life. And although this has not been really proven, again, the science is kind of iffy on sleep and brains and stuff. It makes evolutionary sense because, well, it'd be bad to flop out of a tree when you were sleeping or run off a cliff in reality while running towards, I don't know, tornadoes in your dreams, which kind of happened to me growing up. Weird thing.
Running towards tornadoes. Okay.
I
Future
really like,
storm chaser.
dude, I loved weather growing up. It's my thing. Still my first love.
The movie Twister was basically his dream.
Oh yeah, I
That
got
was
no
a
credit
good
for
fucking movie, though.
So now when you wake up from the sleep, you're supposed to be able to fully move and go about your day, blah, 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 like normal. But sometimes people can actually essentially wake up during REM sleep, but not be able to move their body. They're fully aware of their surroundings, but they are unable to move. For techies out there, in computer terms, their body basically hangs on a boot sequence. So you're just stuck. To be clear, sleep paralysis itself is actually considered normal behavior in humans because, again, the sleep and REM dream thing. But it is a disorder when it occurs outside of REM sleep. So during my light research, I found some videos of studies that were actually done on people suffering from this disorder, and gotta tell you, they are quite terrifying, disconcerting. They're very strange. The patients go from sleeping with their eyes shut to flinging their eyes wide open as if they had actually seen a ghost, just like that. It's pretty common, apparently. Which actually brings me to an interesting fact. Depending on which study that you look at, 20 to 40% of people who have actually experienced waking sleep paralysis have reported sensing or seeing a presence in the room with them. They also reported strangers, aliens, ghosts, their grandma, all these just weird outside things. They also, a good portion of these people have actually reported a heavy pressure on their chest as well. So spooky. That's the Spooktober part of it. Very creepy. Well, doctors and scientists who study sleep paralysis tend to believe that the issue is not an outside entity necessarily, but actually just a mix-up of signals in the brain. Specifically, the fear section of the brain, which scientists are pinpointing to the amygdala.
Amygdala.
That's the word. See,
Yep.
I knew I was talking to the right people. They're studying that. They're finding that that's kind of the lizard brain fear part. Again, it's more complicated than that, but they're pinpointing it to that area. During REM sleep, the amygdala tends to have high activity, which goes into overdrive when patients experience the waking sleep paralysis. Prevailing theory of the whole disorder is that due to the partial or complete muscle paralysis state caused by REM sleep, it actually causes shallow breathing. Then you combine that with the fact that, well, you're aware, but you're not truly aware. You just woke up, you're afraid. That kind of leads towards the heavy feeling, pressure on the chest, which that fear again leads to hallucinations of an entity possibly with them. So again, still a theory. There's a million of them. That seems to be the most widely accepted scientific theory. And of course, there's always the fringe science belief that there is in fact a presence in the room at that point. Kind of made me think back towards Charlie's last episode, that the man who was sleeping and they saw a presence on him. So who knows?
His wife saw someone sitting on his chest, or standing
right,
on his chest.
Right, and who knows? Maybe they're related, maybe they're not. Who knows?
Yeah.
So doctors don't really know what causes sleep paralysis disorder, as I said. Trauma, both physical and mental, stress, mental illness, and even just like poor sleep habits actually tend to increase the likelihood of the disorder. And according to one study, 9% of all people in all the world have actually experienced at least one occurrence of waking sleep paralysis in their lifetime.
Yep.
So I can actually agree with Charlie. I've actually experienced it. I'm pretty sure I experienced it actually earlier this year, ironically. It's not the best feeling in the world. It's very terrifying.
Wouldn't recommend.
That's a 1 out of 10, boys. Easily. So, kind of cool, kind of spooky. Maybe they'll figure it out one day, but who knows? If stress is the cause, then I'm sure there's a lot more people this year that are experiencing it constantly.
Yeah. So, in a related kind of offshoot, have you seen the videos where they have injected dogs with the drug that counteracts the sleep paralysis, so that when the dogs are in REM sleep, they actually get up and like run into the padded wall?
That's kind of funny. I shouldn't laugh at animal abuse, but that's kind of funny. As long as it's a padded wall, it's fine.
Yeah, I mean, the dogs weren't hurt or anything, and they woke up when they hit the wall and were given treats and love. And but I was watching a documentary on sleep earlier in the year when I was very bored, and that was one of the things they showed when they talked about sleep paralysis. And they said, look, we can see that this is a normal thing in most mammals to have this paralysis during sleep because of the rapid eye movement. And some dogs, because they have less levels of that, you'll actually see them twitch their legs in their sleep. My dog
or bark
does it about once a week.
Too.
Oh yeah, bark, growl.
So does this also have to do with the fact that you're numb while sleeping too? Or, I mean, just can't feel pain when they put people under, I assume. You just...
Well, that's not the same
I know
thing
very
as
little about that. So
no, it's totally a natural
different
response, as I said, to really protect your body when you're sleeping, so you don't fuck off and die. I mean, it's only part of the whole sleep process. And again, there's still they're still trying to understand it all. So yeah, I do have an interesting idea for a YouTube channel now that you mention it, Brandon. They should do that with humans and actually record it. I think that would be freaking hilarious. Put like funny English comedy music to it. Oh my god. 10 million views like that. One last bit for this waking nightmare that is 2020. Kind of going back to tech. When I was actually researching all this, lots of articles. And of course, there are links in the description below. But now I'm starting to get a lot of like ads for perfect pillows and mattresses just everywhere on Facebook, Google. So thanks, Google, for watching out for me.
Yeah,
Here, I thought you used a VPN.
Oh, not for that.
So,
like NordVPN.
Stop it.
Oh, we're starting the fake thing where we shill for other people and just not say.
See, if we were going to do that, we should be doing like adult diapers or something funny like that. Like just make it completely random. Or like Raytheon missiles or something stupid. I don't know.
Raytheon, the best missiles.
Lockheed Martin.
So if anyone wants to actually sponsor us, we have free slots. Just saying. We'd love to actually tell the truth on this.
I totally lost.
Instead of being sponsored by Wyoming.
The whole state of Wyoming, huh? Thanks, Wyoming.
Yeah, apparently.
Thanks for making TWIL possible.
Yeah. All 200,000 of you.
Oh, shit. Well, you know what? I think that's a good segue into Charlie's Paranormal Investigations Part 2. Regale us a tale, my friend.
Yeah, so I'll start with the tech. So this night's episode will feature a couple pieces of equipment. Unfortunately, I was not able to produce them for props. But it should be ubiquitous enough that everyone should know what it is. It is the Xbox Kinect. So we actually can run a program, plug that into a laptop, and it will generate an IR grid in a general space. And the program is designed to identify the shape of the human body. And when it thinks it sees something, it creates a form on the computer screen that we can record. My team has had the distinct pleasure of investigating many different places. One of which was the Grant Humphreys Mansion, which is the first governor's mansion of Colorado, named for the first two governors of Colorado. Several jails, Cripple Creek, Blackhawk. There is a old nursing home and rehab hospital turned haunted house in Thule, Utah, called Asylum 49. And we actually have recordings of trying to provoke, verbally instigate activity in a hospital bed room and getting what looked like a medical provider to do what looked like a medical procedure on someone in the bed. So that's very cool and interesting. The lower tech version of this is just a simple laser grid, which can be achieved with a red or green laser pointer and with a filter on it to split the beam into a net looking like projection. It's a little safer to not be wearing glasses around, but if you're looking towards the laser, you should really be protecting your eyes. Unfortunately, most glasses to protect your eyes for that don't really work well in the dark, and that's when we're kind of doing stuff. It's one of those things that, most ghost haunting investigation kind of things happen between the hours of 9 p.m. and 4 a.m., and we like the lights off. I think it's partly setting the mood, partly getting our own brains into the mode to receive that kind of stimuli and be perceptive to subtle changes that modern lighting might drown out. But truly, I think it's that we as investigators, I don't think I know a single investigator that does not just absolutely love the month of October, and we all love having the shit scared out of us, frankly. But there's an investigation that comes to mind specifically that we used the laser grid and had some troubles with and interesting complications with. It was a restaurant, an Italian restaurant. I won't say its name because I don't want to defame it or bring attention to it if the owner does not want attention to it. It's in northeastern corner of the metro area. It's actually kind of outside the metro area. It's one of the oldest structures in this town. It was originally like the general store about 100 years ago, and has gone through different iterations of being like the mayor's house and basically business, and it finally advanced into the point of being just an Italian restaurant. Very old brick construction, very cool building. Go up there, have dinner. It's wonderful. The reports that we had gotten in the building is that of 3 separate unique entities: the troublemaker, the child, and the old woman. The troublemaker is famous for running around the kitchen and knocking stuff over. The child will move childlike objects like balls and teddy bears, and anytime there's kids or anyone with toys in the building, those toys will be messed with. And then the old woman, kind of nebulous activity, more of just sad presence in the room kind of stuff. Nothing real tactile. Anyways, we had a very large team with us that night, probably around 12 people, including the business owner. And we put several different kinds of trigger objects out on the main floor, like a child's ball, some teddy bears. We set up cameras in the kitchen, in the dining room. There was a downstairs kind of loungy bar kind of area. There was a cold storage, but it's just like a kind of a, it's not refrigerated, but the cold stone and brick just made it a cold storage room. The back elevator area. And we had all this stuff set up, and we had the team split into 2 and kind of stayed on opposite corners of the building best we could, kind of controlling for our own experiences. So whatever happened in Group A, we would trade places, and we would not tell what happened to Group B in hopes that they experience the same thing, and then we could have empirical data saying we didn't influence them. There is no, tampering with evidence. Any corroboration is truly corroboration. We set up a laser grid downstairs in the kind of swanky bar area, and one of the things that we find in paranormal investigations is kind of back to the Newton's law of physics, where you can't just create something from nothing, and batteries fail and die at an incredible rate when we're investigating places that have real credible history. And we're diligent, like charging the rechargeables, buying fresh new batteries. We always use fresh new batteries out of the package, not off the shelf, but like got it from the store on the way to the investigation. And the speed at which some of our equipment fails and the length of time that should be taking for that to happen is just mind-boggling. We replaced the batteries in this laser pointer probably 4 times. And it was not like, it was something we had used before. And normal AA batteries should last 2 hours, and they were lasting 15 minutes. So there was like some serious vampire load on that. It would continually get rolled off the table, and like we checked for level, we kind of put some objects next to it to prevent it from rolling, and it still found a way off the table several times. The overall night was kind of, well, boring. Unfortunately, the unfortunate truth of ghost investigation is 98% of the time you're sitting alone in the dark talking to no one. And, if you're lucky, 2% of the time you're getting the shit scared out of you. Something cool is happening. There are entire investigations where absolutely nothing weird happens. And this, fortunately, was not one of those times. So as the night wore on, we had different members of the team kind of call it a night and go on their merry way. Obviously, this is not our primary profession. That's not how we make money. And some of us actually have to work the next day. And as people left, the group got down to the size of about 6, and we were all one group again. About 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning rolls around, and we're in the cold storage room. and we're kind of like, all right, well, we're gonna wrap this up now. If anyone is going to do anything, this is kind of the time to do it because we're about to leave. And about that time, what sounded like someone about the size of Brandon, so that 6'6", 6'5", 270-ish linebacker type body, just ran across the main floor above us and just like a freight train running across the floor. Well, the thing is, we still had the building wired for sound and video, and the video saw nothing, and we were legitimately like, ooh, we got something, and we got nothing. It didn't show up on the recordings, it didn't show up on the video, and every single one of us perceived the exact same thing and experienced the exact same thing. We went so far as to check the external security cameras to make sure that a semi-truck didn't drive by. We checked the railroad schedule to make sure a train didn't go nearby. We checked with the USGS to make sure that there wasn't a mini earthquake. There was no explaining this sound except for the potential of it being an intelligent haunting trying to show us that it was there. And the unfortunate truth is, we have no proof. We have nothing to prove that happened, which is
Even audio?
Even audio. We were so frustrated. So frustrated. You can physically experience something and it'll never be on the recording or the video or whatever. And then there's times where you're sitting there, you're staring right down the hall, and the camera gets something or the audio gets something, and you don't hear it or see it. And the unfortunate thing is, you may not have the cue to go, oh, it was that second door on the right. You should stand outside that room for the next 5 minutes and see if it gets more active. So unless you're doing like that live playback in the moment kind of stuff without real specialized computer equipment on site, you're not going to catch the stuff in the moment. So it's this terrible cat and mouse game that is just so addicting and so fun, but is so frustrating from a scientific perspective, trying to find evidence. There are many ghost TV shows out there, and they're all looking for the same thing. They're all looking for viewership. And so, unfortunately, some of the less renowned folks in the industry, and I'm not going to defame anyone and say anyone's name, but they, like fanaticize and think, like, was that the devil talking kind of reactions in the moment when they play back the audio on the really cheap plastic recorder. And then kind of switching gears and tipping my hat to next week's episode. One of the things that really frustrates me is that when we're doing recording and playback, one of the things that we'll use is a REM pod. And it will spit out words, and it's literally cycling through the RF band faster than you can get syllables out, and it's hoping to sweep and catch someone talking that's not there, like physically not an apparition in front of you, but like this disembodied voice. And one of the things that really commonly happens in the industry is people put that through an amp and put an effects pedal and put echo on it or make it sound spookier. And that is so frustrating. It sounds cool, but if you're trying to like discern words and voices, it's very, very tough. And that will be part of where I pick up for next week.
Interesting.
Cool.
Yeah.
Science.
Yeah, there's a lot of this
Science.
that seems to cross over that I find intriguing just as somebody that's worked in an industry that dealt with wireless technology. So there's a lot of crossover here that's fascinating.
Yeah. And kind of on that topic for a moment, we always make sure that our phones and our mobile devices are always in airplane mode. So, the EMF meter isn't picking up the pulse of someone getting a text. Occasionally we get really excited when there's a lot of activity, and then our team leader's phone dings. And he's like, oh, sorry, guys. And so laptops and computers and phones and all of the things that we carry around with us for investigations, that all puts off EMF, and if we don't regulate that and control it, there's no way to... It's like mapping the surface of the ocean. You'll never be able to find the source. All right, Brandon.
Interesting.
From space!
Beta waves from space.
I already have a prediction of what this is.
Snowman Sky.
What's your
another No
prediction?
Man's Sky
My
update.
prediction is beta 3.11.
Beta 311 Star Citizen, and no, this is real.
Ooh.
You're saying that Star Citizen is real?
Star Citizen is real. It's a game. But you could potentially play it over the beta waves coming from space.
Okay.
So, SpaceX's Starlink program is nearing closer to a public beta. For those of you that haven't heard of Starlink, it's a new constellation of low Earth orbit compact satellites designed to bring internet to underserved and unserved areas of the globe. The initial public beta will be in Canada and the northern United States, pending regulatory agreements in Canada. So this last... Go ahead.
Sorry, random question. Just to specify the underserved and unserved, does anybody know right now what the FCC's definition of broadband is at this time? I'm just curious.
I don't. I should, but I don't. What
Well,
is
I'm guessing.
I don't know. That's why I was asking. It was not a question and answer. Well, I didn't have the answer and the question.
I shall Google it.
Okay. Well,
To the Google.
so the reason why I ask this while they're finding this is because it makes a difference when you use the terminology unserved and underserved, just because a lot of people that live in urban areas kind of forget that most of the country does not have good internet. And surprisingly, living in Alaska, even though I complain about data caps, here until the cows come home, there's a redneck reference for you.
You have cows?
No, I did when I was
How many
really
cows
young.
per minute are you downloading?
The cows are
How many
finite.
cows are you having per hour?
Yeah, exactly. The cattle are finite. But depending on that, it depends on, whether those ISPs in that area can get government funding to increase their bandwidth, or they just want to say just on the cusp of that for all of eternity because copper is the best.
Well, I'm gonna assume that the definition of an underserved area would be like the Sahara Desert or the middle
No, that
of
would be
Afghanistan.
unserved.
Yeah, that's
fair enough.
That would be unserved.
That
I'm
would be
gonna
most of
guess-
Africa.
Parts.
25.
Parts.
I'm just gonna take a guess and say 25 megabit.
You are
Yes.
100% right. Just quick little thing. FCC
25 and 3.
Their definition of broadband is 25 and 3.
Yeah.
So that's
Now-
download and upload, just for reference to people.
25
25
megabits
down.
per second
25
download,
down,
3
3 up.
megabits up.
Because you have to tell the internet what you want to look at. Never forget that.
And those Instagram pictures have to be transferred up.
That's a good reference point. Yep.
Yep. Yeah. So on this past Tuesday, so 2 days ago now, another 60 satellites joined the constellation, bringing the total number of satellites up to 728. Up to this point, a private beta has been running since July in parts of northern United States, but it's been largely limited to SpaceX employees. Musk has recently prioritized emergency services. Last week, Washington State's Military Emergency Management Unit disclosed that it had been using 7 Starlink connections since early August in areas of the state that have been massively impacted by fires. And they were they were impressed with the ease of setting up one of these dishes. They said it's about the size of a pizza, and you just point it at the sky. It's a pizza on a stick.
We talking
What kind
extra
of
large
pizza?
or
Yeah.
small?
Pizza on a stick.
Bigfoot.
They didn't say. They said a pizza, so I would assume like medium or large, somewhere in
Probably not terribly big.
that range. Yeah.
I like mine with pepperoni.
Pepperoni.
Extra marinara on my internet.
I do like satellites with pepperoni. Yes. Or dishes. Yeah.
Kinky.
Comedians.
So, recent tests of the system that SpaceX presented to the FCC show the service is currently capable of 102 to 103 megabits down, with upload speeds of 40 to 42 megabits up, with a latency, get this, 18 to 19 milliseconds.
Are you
wow.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm switching.
So, that
Yeah.
is incredible. My Spectrum cable, which for reference is 400 down, 20 up. So I would take a massive hit down, but my up would get better. And as I have servers, that's kind of appealing to me. My latency on average, on a average day, mid 70 milliseconds.
Yeah.
DSL at a minimum is 100 milliseconds.
Yeah,
just
for
because
reference,
of the technology type.
I live in Tucson, major metropolitan area. My ping to say Google is roughly about 26 to 30, and it's not even consistent. So, and that's right on the pipeline too. So that's impressive numbers.
I'm in Denver, and my down is 60, my up is 2, which is why it takes me forever to send Cody the audio files for this podcast. And my latency to Google is 40.
So for reference, for our non-IT listeners out there, latency is one of those things where it's better when it's low, like golf scores. So it is the time that it takes a piece of information or data for me to send it out and then to receive it back. So that's why we call it a ping. It goes back, ping.
Ping pong.
So a good gamer description of this is the amount of time that it takes for your impulse to fire in a game, for that data to be sent to a game server and it register as a firing on that game server. So if you have really high ping, you're going to have lots of problems in online games. And that's one of the things that is normally terrible about traditional satellite internet is the latency. Because
have you ever
Starlink...
So you can... Sorry to cut you off there, but if you've ever seen a news broadcast where they're talking to the other side of the world and they're like, this week in Kabul, this happened. And then, one person's talking over the other person, or one person, there's like a gap in the news where like nobody's talking for a second. That's because of latency. That's because one person talked, then the other person really, it appears that they haven't spoken yet, but they've probably already been talking for half a second, but you don't see it because they're on a satellite connection.
Yep. And then one of the other bad parts about traditional satellite providers is the cost of installation, and then the data caps are usually very prohibitive. There's not been any official word on data caps yet with the Starlink service.
Oh.
So that's kind of one of the things that I've seen as I've been researching this, is a lot of people going, if there's not data caps on this, this is going to be amazing and it's going to go gangbusters. Yeah. If there's data caps on it,
even if it's a data cap that's not, data caps are bullshit in the first place, but like data cap for a traditional wireless or internet provider of roughly a terabyte is pretty much the standard now. It's still bullshit, but it's acceptable bullshit. So even if it's like something that's usable as a data cap, you're right. Fair enough. But
Terabyte.
if it's at least industry standard data caps, that would be amazing.
True.
That's in the middle.
I really want to see no data caps, but I'm also used to not having data caps on anything.
Yeah, it's
overpay to hell and back on AT&T so that I can not ever have to connect to public Wi-Fi or even my work Wi-Fi.
Yeah, again, this is, a soapbox for us, but yeah, data caps, stupid. There's no reason for them. Your internet service provider is tricking you into not using the service that you're paying for. That's all it is. Nothing more.
It would be like your cable or satellite provider saying, okay, you can only watch 100 hours of TV this month.
Yeah, that's...
Yep.
Can't have that.
It's bullshit. But, back to better news. Elon Musk shared via Twitter that the beta service will start as soon as the most recent satellites reach their target position. Judging from previous launches, this could take up to 4 months, although a third of the satellites will be in position and operational in November, and he had hinted in previous tweets, that he would like to begin testing end of year 2020.
Cool.
Additional northern latitude. Yeah.
No.
Yeah. I am curious. I would be interested in signing up for a beta just to see.
I'm really
God,
curious
man.
on their actual orbits, and I could probably figure this out with a really short internet search. But if it's only serving the northern latitudes, I don't understand how that could be orbiting, because it has to go through the median of the Earth, and whatever the eccentricity of the orbit would cover more land than just the northern United States and Canada. So,
and it does. The problem is regulatory. So they've applied for Australia, because I think that pathing would go over Australia. The same path that serves us would serve Australia.
What about Alaska? Okay.
I don't know. I
When
haven't
you said
been
additional
able to find
northern latitudes, I wanted to know more.
Yeah. There's no specific plans in place, but he said that basically as approvals come in, he'll be able to add additional locations.
Because I think if I remember this right, I think it was Michigan is up first. Based on the story that I read today, which I think, based on the language, is very similar to the story you're reading. So if there's more to that you haven't read yet, it might be this narrow band that goes diagonally through the United States.
42 to 50 degrees is what they originally said their closed beta test was.
Okay.
So I would imagine adding more satellites to the constellation is going to maybe spread that out a little bit.
Yeah.
I wonder what frequency they're using. Because I mean, it's low Earth. It's low Earth. So that's what 100. It's
550 kilometers, I think, is their orbiting distance.
So I'm like, what?
Hold on.
What's interesting is like XM radio. It cut out when I was driving the Alcan up here, because I had it in my truck when I bought the truck. It came with like 2 free months of XM, and I was like, oh yeah, this is gonna be awesome, until I got to about Watson Lake on the Alcan, and then it was like, nope, no more for you. And then I can get it if I drive south to Homer and I face my truck in the right direction. I can actually get it while coming down the hill onto the Homer spit. But that's it.
Well, again, the interesting part isn't that they can obviously receive a signal. It's the fact that you can send a signal back at
Yeah.
a decent latency. That's the thing that it's wrecking my mind. Like, what
Well,
frequency
and
would they
as
even use?
fast as they have, as fast as they're having to move those satellites at that low of an orbit, it's amazing that you can even keep that kind of connection. So yeah,
or you're just connected to multiple at once all the time.
Right. It's like GPS where you're connecting to like 22 at any given moment, and as one falls off, you're getting 2 more connecting, and that sequence is going so fast, and you've got 15 of them that are constant at any given moment. It's
I'm sure with proprietary equipment, there's a way. Yeah, there's got to be a way to have like a 3 or 4 backup connections just ready to go like that. But again, even that quick switch will be a lag spike traditionally.
Not necessarily, because if you have at least 3 of them, you always have one that is connected, so you're always rolling those connections.
What if it's almost like a you do that with the multiple connections, but what's it called? Cody? What is it where you have 2 connections, but you have an automatic switcher between? What's that called? I can't remember what the term is, but basically there's technology, at least.
I was actually talking about this today, and I forget the term. And
so basically,
you'd
have 2 separate connections. As if I know what the fuck Elon Musk and what they're doing, but you have multiple connections, and you have a system in there that 2 or 3 of them are always connected, but the actual bandwidth goes through the strongest one at that point, and then it's constantly reading. Once that signal gets weak enough, it'll automatically switch, and theoretically, there's not going to be any lag at that point, because the internet's always going through both sides, but most of it's going through. I don't know. Who knows?
There's really 2 points that I have that I wish would come true. Is a clear definition of when their ISP is going to be, because I want to buy this stock really badly. But I don't think he doesn't have a roadmap for SpaceX to be publicly traded, and I don't think he's going to do it with Starlink, frankly.
Well, Starlink is part of SpaceX.
Right, it's a subdivision.
Yep.
Just paying for his trip to Mars.
Right. And then the second part is this is like almost intentionally man-made Kessler syndrome.
Yeah, so one of the other articles I was reading was talking about this, and especially with SpaceX is doing their Starlink, Amazon is doing some kind of dispersed satellite constellation.
Facebook.
Yeah,
Facebook is doing
Facebook's
one,
is already working,
and there's
I thought.
another one. I thought that was Project Loon. I don't know.
Well, yeah, but obviously the point is that all these big tech companies are trying to get. I guess it's all untapped markets, regardless.
Yeah.
I mean, underserved areas, you get half the world that can have decent internet. That's money in your pocket.
Come on.
Well, and one of the things that they were talking about in the article that I was reading is that a lot of these satellites are now being forced to have systems on board so that if it starts failing, it deorbits itself.
Yep.
Burns up. Keep the space junk that's already terrible low.
Yeah, and the really good news about this is these Starlink satellites are like the size of like your surface. They're small. And if they enter the atmosphere, it's not hitting anything. It is not going to last that long.
How many of them do they predict to have to replace per year, or just
I haven't seen a number on that.
Like, I've wondered, because something I read a few years ago on it said that they're predicting a certain amount to retire each year as they spin up more.
Well, I know they have launched 775 so far, and there's only 7 with this most recent launch. There's only 728, including this most recent launch, that are operational.
Okay.
And
so they've already lost some.
The full project is 12,000.
I thought they upped it to more than that now. I I thought it was like
If
42,000.
they do it right, they're gonna have significant redundancy to build a true worldwide network like that. And obviously, they with their success of the SpaceX program so far, they've made it significantly cheaper to build.
Yeah.
And obviously, these other companies are probably gonna pay them money to launch their version of whatever fucking network they build. So.
Yeah, the SpaceX rocket that launched this, it was on its third mission and successful landing, and I think it makes like either 40 or 42 successful booster landings.
So, big deal.
Yeah,
it is. Huge. And yeah, I was right. The Constellation could approach 42,000 satellites if all of the if basically everywhere decides they're okay with having satellite internet. The current plan is for 12,000. But if it goes bonkers, they have plans for up to 42,000.
Interesting. Oh, that's cool.
That explains why the eccentricity of the orbit has to be diagonal, and it would hit Australia and Canada and the United States, because that's the only way you avoid going over Russia and China.
Yeah. Yep. As Brandon said, it's all about regulation, I guess, at this point.
Oh, that's interesting. There's going to be a lot of, like, Pacific Island nations that are probably going to join on to this. Like, if you look at something like, tiny, like Pitcairn Island.
Pitcairn, yeah.
Yeah, where it's only like, 60 people on the island and it has terrible internet. If you look at that. It has
internet?
Yeah, it's got internet. It's it's not good. Because it's got the traditional satellite internet.
It'll be all satellite, yeah.
Yeah.
200 megs for the whole island.
But because of the orbit with North America, there's a chance that you're hitting the fringe, off of the Florida satellite maybe, of that to get to Pitcairn. And if they do, like Alaska, for instance, you might hit some of it. The Alaska one might be the Guam one, too. So, yeah, it'd be interesting.
Yeah, the economic benefit is just
Indonesia
fucking through the roof. I mean, interesting.
Philippines has kind of crappy internet. So, looking at the path again, I think either like Washington or something might hit Philippines or Alaska. Yeah.
Well, it's a way to bring all the lower class people in rural areas in the United States and just everywhere around the world. Everyone has a decent internet has a chance for it.
Without
that's the big
Facebook
thing.
net.
Hey,
India, we'll give you free internet. We'll give you
start.
Free internet. That's the Facebook.
Only for
web.
Facebook.
It's like, do you want the worst, most maniacal part of the internet? I guess that would be Facebook and 4chan, but still.
Either way.
All right.
Cool. I'd say that's a decent way to end on actually a positive note for once. Maybe there's hope for humanity if we've earned it. I guess we'll have to see what happens.
Yeah. Only time will tell. So, yeah. Colton, where can we find you?
Well, my name is Colton Roper. You could find me on the internet, Seeker4761 on all the Twitch and the Instagram and the Snapchat and all the other damn places. I'm also a. Oh, go ahead.
No,
sorry, I forgot.
Say that's how many boxing opponents he's defeated. So watch yourself.
Just with this hand. So.
Yes.
Just
watch out, lady. Watch out, Cody's co-worker. We're coming for you.
Wow.
Please don't hit me first. I'm sorry. You're a nice lady, I'm sure. I'm also a contributor to thetechpirate.net. I just did an article posted last night on hands-free telephony, Windows and Bluetooth, and how they pretty much suck together. So check it out. Cody, where can we find you?
You can find me on Twitch, on Steam, on I think Twitch and Steam, Psychonitrous. You can find me on Twitter as Cody Stratman, I think. I don't know. You might not be able to find me there. You might be able to find somebody else there. Who knows? Somebody else might have my name. But that's where you can find me, or on YouTube as Striving to Fail. So, thank you. How about you, Mjolnir?
I'm Charlie Stifler. You can find me riding an ambulance in Denver most of the time, or online as Milnor, Mijolnoir, Twitch and YouTube alike. I need to actually upload a new video to that because it's just the one of a car accident from like 2006. But you know,
if you want to find him, just hurt yourself a bit.
Don't encourage people to hurt themselves.
Or just hunt something in the local metro Denver area. So it's fine.
Have somebody else hurt you. You know, that works too.
Jesus.
God, so much for ending on a good note. Jesus. Brandon, take
you
us
might
away,
have
please.
new friends.
Brandon. Just Brandon.
I'm Brandon Vader. You can find me on thetechpirate.net. You can also find me on YouTube as The Tech Pirate. You can find me on Steam as Dracanus. You can find me on Star Citizen as Dracanus. Or I think Dracanus Vader, maybe. Yeah, because that's where I'm going right after this, is to PTU 3.11.
Wait, PTU?
3.11. It's not the PTU
PU
anymore.
3.11. Yeah.
3.11.
It's 3.11.
It's 3.1.
They call it 3.11.
It's 3.1.
It's 3.11.
There's only one way
Don't
to
confuse
read a
the people
decimal
more.
system.
Not if you're a developer.
Clearly.
Take us home.
Anyway.
Take us home,
Touche,
Brandon. Take us home.
touche.
Take us home.
Thanks for joining us on this episode of This Week I'm Learning. You can find us wherever you listen to podcasts, as well as on YouTube at This Week I'm Learning. For you social media peeps out there, you can find us on Twitter at ThisTWIL. If you'd like to contact us, you can send us an email at twill@thetechpirate.net. We'll see you all next week.
Bye, guys.
Don't hurt yourself.
Don't hurt yourself.
He's
Don't
not worth
follow him in real life.
Don't follow any
Don't
advice
follow
Cody
him
gives
in
you.
real life.
You don't have to meet Charlie that way. He's a nice
Yeah.
person, regardless of
Yeah.
how he is on this channel. It's fine.
Yeah. Whoa. Whoa.
Oh God, no!
Shots,
No!
shots fired.
Oh, he got me.
That's some Among Us shit right there.
Seeker was not the imposter.
Yeah, just me like floating sideways through space.
I love
That's
how
an episode.
that has like become culture recently. Like
Yeah.
with
It is
everyone.
everywhere. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a fun game, too. Like,
It is.
I like it.
Hey, all four of us have this game now. I'm just saying. Play 4-player with 1 imposter. You have to kill 2 people to win.
Ooh.
Could totally do it. And we could record it